lottery ticket or something. We got 2 points there lining up. But anyway, today's program is going to cover the usual things, the new ALF Medicaid rules, the QMAP task force, the new ALR rules and regulations, and we're going to talk a little bit about the legislative session, what's going on with that. We are a month out from the legislative session being completed, and that certainly is exciting because that means we don't have to worry about anything for the rest of the year until the new legislative session starts. So lots has been going on, all in assisted living. Big meeting on March 17th up at HICPUF, talking about the ALF rates, the Rate Review Advisory Committee. Some of you that are listening in may have participated in that by calling in and then providing your economic information to them. I know the meeting was packed. I know the room was packed. I know they were overloaded on the telephone. The real issue is that all of us, all of our members that take Medicaid are going to be affected by these rules, but they're also affected by the rates. As we all know, we can barely get by on what Medicaid is paying us now for the people that we have in our ALFs, and we are constantly, the association is constantly working with HICPUF to try to get that amount elevated. There is going to be a little bit of a bump in Medicaid reimbursement rates with this next budget that's just completed going through the Senate and is now going to be going over to the House, and they will spend next week going through the budget and then adopting that, and then it'll have to be reconciled. What is the amount? Who knows? You will not know until this process is over. Will it be adequate? Will it be adequate to cover all the expenses that you have? Probably not. But every little bit helps, and all we can do is just keep trying to go ahead and increase those reimbursement rates to us through the process. When the next budget session starts, which they'll start doing figure setting in October, we'll be there working with that particular section in the HICPUF budget as it relates to Medicaid fees, rules, you name it, it's all there. On a side note, before we go to the next topic, we are very fortunate that on April 28th, the second day of the CALA Spring Conference, Sue Birch is going to be the keynote speaker, and she'll be opening up the program that day. Now, Sue Birch is the director of the Colorado Healthcare Policy and Financing Division. She is the big kahuna. So we're very fortunate to get her to come to the conference. This is going to be your opportunity to go ahead and talk to her about what the heck is going on. You'll be able to see her up close and personal. So please mark that down so that you can go ahead and register for the conference and participate in that. Another thing that we're having trouble with Medicaid on is the fact that with the new payment system that was just introduced, that a lot of people aren't getting paid, and that's a real issue. At our last brain food session that CALA had last Friday, we had Dee Rita from CDPHE, and we talked about that people weren't getting paid. There are some people that are even at the point where they may have to shut down because they have no income coming in. So anyway, we're working with CDPHE and HICPUF to see if we can't get some money released for everybody, just to go ahead and pay the bills until they can get this problem with the software. It's just a terrible, terrible thing, and they have not gotten it fixed yet. So we're working. CALA's up there working, trying to get them moving, seeing what they can do to help to facilitate the transition, and we'll keep you posted on what's going on with that. Let's talk about QMAP, because there's not a whole lot to talk about QMAP on. As you all know, last month the QMAP stakeholder group finished up the rewrite and rules and everything for the new legislation that was passed during the last legislative session has been completed. It is going forward and will be heard on April 21st at the medical board over at CDPHE to go ahead and authorize it. For the most part, the rework and the new regs and getting it set up went very, very well. CALA has got some concerns over the fact that in these new rules and regs, there's no provision for QMAPs to be recertified every, whatever the time period is, every 2 years, every 3 years, whatever. But there is not a provision in there. And so we have a concern about that, and we're going to be working on that with CDPHE and see if we can't make some adjustments and get that taken care of. Let's move on to the new ALR rules and regs. We had a meeting last week on Thursday, and it was basically dealing with food processing and security, and I can't remember what the other item was, but it was a different kind of session. There wasn't any opportunity. The issues just weren't that monumental. So it was sort of a lackadaisical rules and regs. As you can see, they continue to go on. It's still going to be, the process is going to go through the summer. And what our real concerns are is that regardless of what's going on, when these rules and regs have been initiated, there's going to be lots of changes on the assisted living front. You will have to make some adjustments, and you're going to have to make those adjustments and take care of those things that just to get yourself in compliance with the new ALR rules. And that's going to be extremely, I think that's going to be difficult for some people. But the other thing that the association concerns has is the fact that with these new rules and regs, there's going to be additional costs. And the association does not know how to go ahead and tell you what to do in preparation for that.
Hi, Corky. This is Bill. I just joined in.
Okay, cool, Bill. Welcome. So with Bill joining, I'm going to turn, Bill, we're doing the ALR new rules and regs.
Okay.
And I was talking a little bit about the extent of what has been going on, and I want you to jump in here and take over. The other part that I had been mentioning to everybody was that regardless, once these new rules and regs are done, it's going to mean that the industry is going to have to make some adjustments. And that's going to be, for some it's going to be easy, and for some it's going to be difficult. But regardless, it's all going to cost money. And what those increases will be, we are not sure of until we get an opportunity to see what the final product is. So anyway, I'm going to let you talk on what happened last Thursday. And here's Bill Bowles, our president, the president of the Colorado Assisted Living Association.
Hi, everyone. The latest ALR meeting was a little bit interesting. I had received a call from the ombudsman indicating that we were going to have a discussion on secured units compared with using egress alert devices and how the topic or the concept of restraints ties into that discussion. And it turns out that when I arrived at the meeting, we sat down to talk, we talked about food service, which is always exciting. And there is a very heightened sense of responsibility that the Department of Health feels in terms of managing the food service of assisted living communities, and I'm really, really pleased that I was able to participate in the meeting and represent the smaller communities in some of these rules, because, as you know, food service with a community that is 20 beds or less is drastically different from those mid-sized communities with more than 20 beds that essentially is considered to have a commercial kitchen. They talked about a lot of different nuances of the regulations in terms of one of the big things had to do with resident rights and the residents' ability to choose what they want to eat, despite there being a list of prohibited items from the state, such as raw foods, eggs that are organic and not necessarily homogenized, things that you would grow in the garden, especially with regard to different types of sprouts and things like that. And so they were really drilling down into specificity, but one of the things that was argued was the concept of resident rights and their ability to be able to consume these items at their own discretion. Another issue had to do with food being brought in from the outside, and initially they had proposed the language that those items would be prohibited from being served by the community, and so there was a lot of massaging the language that we had to do in order to maintain the rights of our residents. And there were some things that came down the pike in terms of sanitary conditions and such as things as that they're now going to require that when an individual is in a community and they are involved in any kind of food preparations, that they're not doing so, that there is some sort of barrier between the scrubs of the clothing that they're wearing while providing personal care, that the state regs are going to require like an apron for folks to, for staff members that are preparing food. So there are a lot of those little things in the discussion that we engaged in. And they talked about mandating that fluids will be provided between meals, and they also talked about dietary programs that would monitor a resident's weight and weight loss. And some of the language that we really pushed back on from a smaller community, for example, resident food consumption shall be monitored for changes that could lead to unplanned weight loss or dehydration. Changes in consumption that may indicate a need for assistance with eating shall be reported to the resident's family representative and physician. The proposed language, when it was put out, we pushed back on that because it's not necessarily their desire that we would monitor our residents' food habits such that we would be required to monitor their weights relative to the food service program. But what they wanted to see was a plan in place that if a resident is losing weight, then as far as the QMP is concerned, that's listed it's listed from a community standpoint to be able to determine that, you know, here's the reason why this individual is losing weight, went on hospice, and this is what we have documented with regard to their food. So, and that's also in the works. And let's see, it was a very, very thick discussion on the concept of dining and feeding, and to what extent that individuals who require feeding, should those individuals be accepted into assisted living, because some people would consider the process of feeding an individual to be on the skilled side. They were talking about individuals who are actually doing the feeding need to have documented training in order to do that. We talked about therapeutic diets. There weren't any changes there. You know, they talked about the notion in the training that they talked about that goes along with the feeding of a resident for those individuals who have swallowing issues, because a lot of times caregivers, there's an assumption being made that they know how to, they know whether a resident, a lot of times what is happening is that a resident has in their care plan that they receive a therapeutic diet, which means really they talked about diets that are mechanical soft or pureed along those lines. And what they were finding was that there were residents who had those types of therapeutic diets in their care plans, but they weren't being implemented in the dining room. And even when they were, the care providers were not issuing those according to the care plan, according to best practices. So that's why they talked about training. They did talk a little bit about the health information records and who needs to be notified. They added language in that the power of attorney and the physician needs to be notified. However, I mean, upon change of request or change of condition, however, those are going to be massaged a little bit, because sometimes the committee felt like some of those were prohibited or prohibitive. But all in all, it's from a smaller assisted living standpoint. There weren't any dramatic changes to the regulations with regard to food service, and there is always a heightened sensitivity toward hygienic practices. And one of the examples was that in the regs, it was interesting because from a resident rights standpoint, that they wanted to recommend that an individual wash their own hands before they prepare their own meals. However, it's up to them. What they decided to put in the regulation is that if a resident is helping prepare meals for any of the other residents, then it would be required for them to wash their hands. As you know, there are also several different types of activities, food demos and things like that occur in a community. But you know, from a hygiene standpoint, that's something that they spent a great deal of time on discussing. So, in a nutshell, that's pretty much all that they discussed. It wasn't too earth-shattering. I believe that the discussion in April is going to go the direction of the secured environment and constraints or restraint in the Colorado regulations. So from a smaller community standpoint, I spoke with the ombudsman, and she wanted me to encourage all of our members to find a way to be able to participate in this discussion, because from a larger community, that discussion is well represented. However, the smaller communities from the memory care side, the secured memory care side, in addition to those of you who may not be secured but use a wander guard, or simply those individuals that put a chime on your door that when the door is opened, it sounds throughout the building. That is an egress alert device under the definition of the state. So to the extent that the ALR committee is going to be discussing those items, it's very, very important that we have representation from those of you, even if your community is not secured, even if you don't use an egress alert device, that you're able to participate in the discussion. And of course, I will be there to represent the Colorado Assisted Living Association interest. However, I need to go beyond my perception of what the need is. And so we really need for you to participate in this meeting. And the association will send out an email as to the time and date of this particular meeting. It's typically the third or the fourth Thursday of the month. And so we'll be sending that out to everyone. But for now, I will turn it back over to Corky.
Bill, thanks very much. That was awesome. That was great. That's one of the best reports we've had, and that was exceptional. That's I'm sure everybody on here, and we've got 23 people that are on here listening, and I'm sure they appreciated that very, very much. That
you know, let me do this, Corky, as well. If anybody wants to email me any questions with regard to what I have literally 10 pages of notes, and so it's very difficult to summarize and explain everything. So if there's anybody with any individual concerns and you'd like to email me, please do so. You can do it through the website, but let me give you my personal email. It's wjbolesjr@hotmail.com. That's wjbolesjr@hotmail.com. And any questions you might have, I'll do my absolute best to answer those. And if not, send you to a resource that you that'll be able to help you out. So,
hey, Bill, that's great. And everybody, I hope you got that email, because that's extremely important. Bill's there every month, and we have great participation. But if you've got a concern, send it to him. He's the man. He's the one who's there representing the association. So, Bill, thanks again. That was a tremendous report.
I just put Bill's email address in the chat, so if you're listening, you can look at the chat and just click on the email address.
There you go. All right, let's go into our next item, which happens to be what's going on over at the legislature. It's been a while since we've done this. Well, it's been a month. No, it's been over a month, because we didn't do one last month. So let me tell you what's going on over there at the Capitol. So far, there have been 645 bills introduced. That's 645 single issues addressed. That's a lot. And we're quickly approaching 700. And if we hit 700, that'll be one of the all-time highs for any legislative session. I'm thinking it's going to go to 725, maybe even possibly 750. But let's back up for a minute, and of that 645 bills that have been introduced, there have been 306 Senate bills introduced and 337 House bills introduced. Now, as you can see, there's more bills in the House than the Senate, and that's because in the House there's 65 members, and in the Senate there are 35 members. But still, they've both got 300 bills out there. What are they thinking? So that gives us our $645. 45 bills, dollars. Oh, where's my mind going? Also, out of that 645 bills that have been introduced, 115 of those bills have been killed. They were either killed in committee or killed on second reading or a third reading. And that breaks down to, if I've done my math right, 60 bills from the Senate and 55 bills from the House. Now, the CALA legislative program, we are tracking 26 bills that the Government Relations Committee gets on. We do a conference call every Friday and go over all of the legislation that we are tracking and what's the latest developments and everything like that. Of the 26 bills that we're tracking, 2 have gone to the governor for signature, and we've had 3 of them killed. So there's a little movement there in that particular arena. as we get closer to the end of the legislative session, which we only have a month to go, there's still going to be bills introduced, but they're going to be fewer and fewer. So if you're interested at all, you can always join in the conversation with the Government Relations Committee when we do our regular committee meetings. And if you want to email me, ckyle@thekylegroup.com, I'll be glad to give you all the information so that you can get into the meeting and participate as we go through the legislation. This year we did not do any legislation on the part of the membership. We focused totally on the ALR new rules and regs and the QMAP new rules and regs. So this year it's been one of monitoring and tracking and providing testimony and facts on the issues that we have been working on. So that concludes our webinar. Are there any questions that we can try to answer? I'm not, anything there? Anyone, go ahead and let us know what the questions are. Deb, we got anybody asking any questions?
On the chat, I don't see any, Corky.
Oh, okay.
No.
I don't see any either.
No, I'm going to try to unmute everybody if they, it doesn't seem, oh, here we go. You can raise your hand by clicking on raise your hand, and then I can unmute you individually. It doesn't seem that I can unmute everybody at once. So next to your name, you can click on raise your hand, and then I'll be able to see you and unmute you. Nope, nope, none so far.
Hello?
Right.
Hello?
Hello. Did you have a
Hi,
question?
this is Gary Prager. I'm wondering if you have coordinated any of these bills with the Leading Age Colorado Legislative Committee. They're doing quite a bit of lobbying for the individual providers.
Corky, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm there. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a lobbyist, very familiar. We're old friends. They look at their bills and we look at our bills, and sometimes we come together on issues and sometimes we don't, but for the most part we take care of our members individually from anybody else. Any other questions? Again, I want to go ahead and share with everybody. I want you to go ahead and mark in your calendars the upcoming April 27th, 28th CALA Spring Conference. Please, can you mute those, Debbie? Yeah, thank you.
Look it up. Look at raise hand. You're not going to do it, Anna.
Anyway, Please go online and register for the April 27th, 28th CALA Spring Conference. It's an exciting conference. Like I mentioned earlier, we've got Sue Birch from HICPUF going to be the opening keynote speaker. We have Randy Kirkendall, who's going to be our luncheon speaker on the 28th. We've got 19 different educational programs for everybody to participate in. This is by far one of the best spring conferences that we have put together for our members and all the other professionals in the industry that would like to participate. Again, April 27th, 28th, Radisson, Denver Southeast Hotel, I-225 and ILIF or Parker, depending on which side of the road you're on. Fantastic place. Everyone have a great weekend, and thank you very much.